My guest today is Efrat Fenigson.
I think we're going to talk about a bit of geoengineering, a bit of climate agenda and how it's related to the new world order and to the new monetary order that is coming about. We can talk a bit about the different climate restrictions climate related restrictions that we're seeing around the world. Yeah, and maybe just to frame everything, I think everything that we will touch is related to the new world order that is shaping up in recent years and will continue to shape up for the next few years. I think we are right in the middle of this process. And it's something that I've been closely watching for the past 4 or 5 years since I was woken up to these things thanks to COVID.
Yeah, there's so much waking up going on right now. From my perspective, this great awakening, it's happening, I think, and people are elsewhere calling it a vibe shift. I think so many people are figuring out they're not normies anymore. I for sure was a normie myself as of a few years ago. But I think now people are figuring out that a lot of this stuff is tied together and this WEF, et cetera. There's a lot of people who are trying to get some control of us, but people are figuring it out.
Right. I think we all, most of us are normies before we wake up.
Yep.
There's only probably a gifted few that are born more awake than others. But I think the world that we are born into is so meticulously designed to have us indoctrinated and educated to believe that all the systems and the processes that we see around us are real and are for our higher good, for our benefit. And I think it's a very smart, sophisticated matrix that we live in that has us not just believing in it, but also giving our energy and our time into those systems that at one point we feel so drained and so disempowered that we look around us and ask, how come? What's happening here? Something's not right. Like, this is not adding up. Like, I'm putting all this time and energy and investment and attention, focus into those systems, and somehow I don't feel energized back. I don't feel empowered back. And I'm not saying that that is true for every area of your life. Some people find, their rescue or their safe haven in hobbies or in their families or friends, which is great. But it normally is the case for some areas of your life, and especially for your career and whatever is related to producing wealth. That is becoming harder and harder for people, and most people around the world are just really struggling to make ends meet. And I think that once you start investigating why that is, then you are able to pull on many different leads, many different threads that will take you to different directions, and you have the choice to make how far you want to go, how much you want to know, because the information is there for you to absorb and to understand. And then once you are consumed by that new information about how the systems are designed and how you are encouraged to go to different directions that may not be great for you, but someone is like kind of creating those pathways for you to enter, for you to walk in, and for you to think it's normal, then you have a choice to decide or to choose whether you want to continue walking in those paths or you want to change something in your life. And I think that is the hardest part about awakening, that if you truly embrace that process or that journey, it gives you the choice, and it can be scary because then you need to choose to see new things and understand them. But the scariest part is that you actually need to change stuff in your life to match what you have seen and understood that may not be for your highest good. And now you want to better your life. You want to improve things. You want to make yourself feel better, and your family, and your future looking better than what it looked until that point. And then you have to start making changes, and people don't like to change things in their lives. And that's why at that point, many people will turn around and go back to where they came from, or just like forget, slowly forget, or not continue to learn, or not invest in doing the inner work that is required in order to make change and handle change. And therefore, that particular process is not an easy one. It's not very it's not obvious at all to me that people will awaken. And it's a process. It's not a one-time thing. So if you choose to go down that rabbit hole, then you have to constantly do work on yourself and keep reminding yourself who you are, why you're here, what is all this for, what's the purpose of you operating in life, and why invest all this time and effort in improving oneself, and why consume the information that you're consuming. So, these are big questions and big things to handle in life. And I really applaud those who are taking the time and the effort that it takes to change things in their lives, and really embark on that journey, and then continue walking down that path of awakening. And awakening is not just informational. So being aware of, the COVID scam or the climate scam or other scams, the fiat scam, it's not enough to just know the information. Then there is some kind of spiritual consciousness work that needs to be done alongside the informational path. And I think awakening is never complete if it's just the informational pathway that you're taking. If you're not escorting that path with some spiritual or inner work to kind of prepare your vessel to hold that change, to hold that new information that is coming in, to hold the emotional response, to hold your mental state, to handle the new mental state that you're coming into, then awakening is going to be very hard, and you're probably going to end up being black-pilled, what people call black-pilled, or just like be very doom and gloom and have no hope and be a bit desperate or depressed, because what you'll be seeing are not necessarily easy things to handle. So you have to kind of be compassionate to yourself, to your body, to your capacity to hold all that and do the work, do the inner work. Yeah, that's my philosophy about it. I don't think you asked me about that. I just went there.
No. So yeah, I am a huge fan of your work. And I think one thing that makes your work so good is that you dig so deep, you go down the rabbit holes and you read the long PDFs on all sorts of subjects, right? You've dug far into CBDC. I don't know who else has dug more into central bank digital currency than you, or you are the one person I think that has really looked at that one atmosphere document about geoengineering and just read it carefully. And you're doing a lot of reading. What is your process?
Yeah. Sometimes it's a painful process because reading all that shit is not fun, I tell you. It's not fun, but I feel like it's important. Like whenever I read it and I discover one more thing, I go, fuck them. whoever is writing this, whoever is putting this together, like, fuck them. Seriously. They either they have no idea what they're doing. They're so detached from the impact that they have over humanity, or that they are lying to themselves, or that they just think those are really good ideas, all those things that they're pushing down on humanity. And it makes me kind of, I use this energy to not accelerate, but to push me forward on what I do, because it pisses me off. And I use that energy to keep going, because I know it's important to reveal those things to people, to show them, to kind of put those long, horrible documents into some digestible podcasts or presentations, and speak about it, whether it's in short form tweets or some threads, or 20-30 minutes presentations in conferences, or in a conversation with someone on a podcast. I just know how much people get benefit out of it, so I continue doing it. But it's not easy. So the process is probably, before I have so let's start like that. Okay, sorry. I create the opportunity, kind of forcing myself to create the opportunity to speak. And the opportunity to speak would be either on a stage in a conference or in a podcast episode with someone. So those are opportunities to speak. I have to speak in those scenarios. I don't necessarily want to do it. I mean, I enjoy talking to people once it already happens, like now, you and I speaking. I love it, right? But the topics, or the it wouldn't be my first choice. Like, if you'd woken me up now and say, hey, Flight, what do you want to talk about? I'd probably tell you, let's talk about spirituality, nature. You love birds. I love nature. Let's talk about birds. Let's talk about, I don't know, fashion. Let's talk about good content, books, things that really lift me up. Let's talk about sunrises, sunsets, about life in different places around the world. My first choice would probably not be CBDC or the new monetary order or the new Middle East order or the new totalitarian order in the world. Those would probably not be my first choices. And therefore, I have to create the opportunity to talk about them because they are important. So I give them the time of day in my life. So I first force myself to create those opportunities. I will make a podcast, or I will make the time for the podcast, or I will schedule a time to do a speaking engagement in a conference. And then once it's set in my schedule, I'll start do the research. And I'll do the research probably a few weeks ahead of the opportunity, here and there. I mean, the moment I set it up in my schedule is already the moment where my radars start to open to those topics. I don't necessarily sit down and write, like do the research by writing, but my radars are open. And whenever I see some kind of information related to it, or I see like a thread, I pull on that thread because I want to discover, because now in like 2 weeks or in 2 months, I have a speaking opportunity. I have a podcast episode with someone. So I have to be more, more smart about it, like smarter or well-informed. So I have my radars open, and whenever I see a piece of information, I pull on the thread and I save the article or the video, whatever it is I save it in my list. And then a few days before the event, that's where I start really working on it. A few days or a week before, and I take those lists that I have accumulated throughout the past few weeks or months, and I open everything. And I start reading a lot. It's like I invest many hours, days days, full days, from the morning till the evening, just reading through stuff. And then I start connecting the dots between them. And then I start putting them together, whether it would be in a document, in an article, or in a presentation. And it's like my evidence, my proof, my proof of work. I put everything there, and until I'm content that this is a good story to tell, or there is a good flow there, and I'm not easy to satisfy because I'm a very critical person and I have very high standards, and so and I watch other people's work or read other people's work, and sometimes I would criticize myself so much, and I'd go, they've done all this work already, and they've done such great work. Why do I need to do that again? I mean, not again. I'm not like 100% recycling what other people are doing, but I am relying on other people's work, if it's not from source documents. And I tend to, that's my thing there, it's like my weak points where I have to like be compassionate to myself and go, shut up, just keep going, because this is good for someone. Like, this will bring value to someone. And also the way that you wrap it up and the way that you tell the story somehow resonates with people very well. I mean, I have a lot of experience in communication and in storytelling and in marketing. So I know how to tell a story in a very simplified, compelling way, and to weave the facts or the points together in such a way that will make it easy to listen and easy to digest. So I keep going, and then I come up with a deliverable, with something that I can put out there, whether it's a blog post or a podcast episode or a presentation. And the last one I've done, I've done a few recently, but I've done one that's called the New Totalitarian Order, and it was a 50 minutes presentation before an amazing lecture by Professor Matthias Desmet. We did an event together, a conference together. So I did 50 minutes talking about the new totalitarian order that is forming in the world and giving a lot of proof points to that. And then he came to talk about the theory of mass formation and how totalitarian orders are coming to life. And then we did a fireside chat and we talked for another hour. It was an amazing conference. I'm going to put it out there on digital format as well, so that the people that couldn't enjoy the actual physical conference could watch it. So I'm going to put it out there. That was the first one. And then the second one was the new monetary order in a changing world. a new presentation I made for the conference in El Salvador. Half hour, 25 minutes presentation that kind of shows what would the new monetary order is going to look like in the world in the next few years. And it's shaping up, and it's like we're in the middle of that process. So it's very hard to make that kind of presentation because I speculate, but I base my speculation on where I'm seeing things are going towards. And those are like just the recent two. And there's the CBDC stuff that I've been doing for a while. So yeah, there are a lot of deliverables out there. I just need more time of day and more people to help me to take all this content out.
So even this last 2-year run of yours is just off the charts, right? You've done all this speaking around the world on various subjects. And as you're talking, I'm looking at the list of people who've been on your podcast, on You're the Voice. It's only been about 2 years, right? Or since you started it. And
yeah, even less.
I'm just going to read off a bunch of names. It's a long list, but I'm going to read them because it's amazing. Mike Benz, Michael Saylor, Ed Dowd, Matthias Desmet, Jeff Booth, Malcolm Roberts, Natalie Brunel, Christine Anderson, James Corbett, Simon Godek, Jessica Rose, Ahmed Malik, Jimmy Song, Nick Hudson. I don't know how to say Eva's name.
Wow.
Eva.
Eva
Eva.
Vladenbroek.
Yeah. Yeah. Isabel Santos. You and I interviewed Steve Koonin. Steve Koonin's on the list.
That's right.
So it really concentrates your mind, doesn't it, to know I'm going to be interviewing Ed Dowd, and doesn't that you research what he has said? He said so many important things, and to listen to him, yeah,
right.
You're learning a ton, I would guess. I find myself learning as I talk to people on the podcast. Yeah.
And I think I started my Telegram channel because I wanted to have a repository of all the great content that I was seeing out there in the past few years. And I told you my process is to keep my radar open, and whenever I see something, save it. So I gathered, okay, instead of just saving it in some list and just working on it when I need to, I'll put it out there. Maybe other people will be interested as well. So I started my Telegram channel. I do that also on Twitter, but when you have a Telegram channel, it's easier to then search and to articulate your thoughts, I think. That's the tool I chose. And then before an interview with someone, I'd go to my channel and I'd search for their name, and I'd come up with all the stuff that I've saved in the last few years. And I'd review all that. So with Ed, that is something I've done, because I think I have consumed so much of Ed Dowd content in the last few years that I really, before the interview with him, I really wanted to immerse myself again in all his content and materials, so that I can ask intelligent questions and not just things that are related to what's happening right now, so that I can, have a reference back and have a deeper conversation. So I think it's important when you are interviewing people, or Mike Benz, right? Another good example. That has, I cannot say that I've consumed everything that Mike put out there, because he's a crazy animal, this guy. But, I've seen a lot, and yeah, it was so hard also to wrap my head around his work, because his work is so deep in one direction, and you have to really be well informed in everything he's talking about. A lot of geopolitics, a lot of cyber stuff, and information related technologies, and big tech, and so many things that he's covering, So in order to really be able to interview all these people, and not just interview them, when I interview people, I try not to just be, just say something superficial at the beginning. Hey, Tom, nice to meet you. Can you tell us about yourself? Then I leave everything to you, and then have 2, 3, 4 guiding questions, and then finish it off. That's I think easy. You can do that with anyone, but I want my interviews to be a little bit more sophisticated. So I learn a lot before each one of them. And to be honest, sometimes I think maybe it's stupid, because I invest so much time in doing that. And that's why I cannot release more episodes or interview more people, because I spend the time on researching and investigating stuff. And I guess that's who I am. I don't know if I can change that. I can do a bit less reading and less research, but it will make my product be less, I think, interesting. And I really want to have a good quality, sophisticated discussion with those people. So I'll put in the time. I don't know. That's just how I am, how I'm wired.
I got an idea of your process when we interviewed Steve Koonin. I got an idea of how you prepare, and it's incredible. It's amazing, the amount of time you spend, the level of detail. How many hours?
I am not, and that's why I invited you to do this interview with me, because I could not handle it on my own. That's what I thought, at least. I'm not an expert on climate, right? And I'm here. I'm going to speak with this professor that is coming from such a different field to what I know, to what I had put my effort on. So I humbly say, I don't know enough. I want someone to help me with that. Can you come along, Tom, and do this with me? I'll do what I can do in reading and in watching and investigating, but I'll reach that far because I'm not an expert on that topic. Anyway.
So another thing I just wanted to bring up here, you do a lot of your content in Hebrew still, or you did quite a bit of Hebrew content?
Right. And most of my content is in English, I would say, but I have two WhatsApp groups with like 1,500 people and one Telegram channel with like 2,500 people and a mailing list. And I've just done the event with Matthias Desmet. It was in Israel, and it wasn't in Hebrew, it was in English, but with Hebrew translation, simultaneous translation there for people to be able, because it was all Israelis speaking Hebrew. But I continue to create content in Hebrew, not a lot. I do it because it's my home, it's my friends, my family, people that I care about, the community that is following me in Israel. I appreciate them so much because I know that they want to learn and improve and expand their abilities. Because what I do is not for beginners. It's like, it's for advanced, awakened individuals or those that really want to invest in their process. And so I really acknowledge them and appreciate them. And I try to make some content in Hebrew for them because I want them to, it's also my friends, my boyfriend and my close friends. And I want them to be aware of the stuff that I see, that I'm exposed to. So every podcast episode that I do, for example, I put it out in my Hebrew speaking groups, and I give them the summary in Hebrew, and I send them to YouTube where they can have automatic translation, subtitles in Hebrew to the English content. By the way, you can do that in every language. So you can, on YouTube today with AI, it's built in. You can just choose your preferred subtitle language, and you can watch like Tom's content in translated to Thai or Filipino or whatever. Hebrew, any language.
How do you keep track of all this stuff? It seems like on X, you're personally responding to people as they're replying, and you have all Telegram going on and all these different platforms. And you have different groups, maybe on geoengineering, et cetera, on X, and you're contributing there. How do
Not
you do
my
that?
group. I'm just in many groups.
You're in many groups. But do you actually have some sort of time discipline where you say, I'm going to be reading this PDF for this 1 hour and I'm not going to let anything else distract me? Or are you just constantly replying on everywhere all the time? How do you do that?
I'm not that sophisticated. I don't have good time allocation. I see people like Mark Moss, for example, a person that I interviewed for the podcast, who is like giving tips to his followers on Instagram. He's like showing them his schedule, his daily schedule. And he goes, today I'm going to do 2 hours of this and 1 hour of that and 3 hours of that. And I'm like, wow, he's so good. I'm not like that. I don't know. It's just like intuitive. I'm drawn to places I do it. I do know where it is important for me to put the focus, generally speaking. And then I navigate there intuitively. I have very good skills that I have developed throughout the years when I worked in corporate. I worked in so many tech companies and have managed teams of between 10 to 20 people and budgets of millions of dollars, and were able to make a lot of projects be successful and come to life. And I did that with a lot of discipline and a lot of hard work. And I think I developed some good time management skills and delegation skills. And so I don't need to plan that meticulously, like my hours of the day, because it's natural for me. But I do need to plan. If I zoom out from the daily schedule to a weekly schedule and maybe to a monthly schedule, I do need to plan out my phases of, I view myself as a business, or I view myself as a project. I mean, my podcast, my blog, my conferences, all these things are projects that I have in that little business called me. Now it's me. And so I have to plan out how I'm going to reach my goals. And I know when it's time to scale and when it's time to bring more help, when it's time to delegate, when it's time to put money on things and to stop doing things on my own. Because I have been doing that for so many years, for so many ventures, startups and larger companies, small projects, big projects. So it's kind of, it's intuitive for me now because I've done it many times. But for example, with my own, with a podcast, I started it, I think, May of 2023, or April or May of 2023. And I knew that for the first year or even more, year and a half, I'm going to do everything on my own because it's the 0 to 1 phase. I have to build it. It's building the foundations. And also I am the kind of person that loves experiencing things and then seeing things with my own eyes, feeling them with my own body. And then once I understand how things work, I can then delegate it to someone else, because then I can train someone, I can show them how it's done, I can build the process as well myself. And then I can train someone else to do the process the way I like it, or the way I think it's right for that specific project or business. So I've done that. And after about a year of doing everything myself, from scheduling, finding the guests, interviewing them, creating the content, editing, doing the distribution, branding, everything myself. And marketing, of course. And then I started taking help. And now I have a team working with me on editing, and a team working with me on doing all the social media clips and stuff. But the way they work is the way I think is right. The way I had built it in the first year. And when I onboarded them, I gave them like a brief document with all the steps of what they need to do and how it needs to be done. And I have calls with them regularly, and I call them to account. And if they're listening to this, they would know. And I tell them when I onboard them, I tell them I'm not an easy customer because I know what I want, and because I've done this so many times before, and I'm going to be very meticulous with you, like call you to account. I have very high integrity, like work integrity. And I see stuff, especially on the visual side. I see like if graphically or in terms of composition, things don't look right, or coloring or branding or whatever it is. So I ask for changes. So I uphold my high level of work, and I delegate it to other people to help me. And I grow like that. I scale it. And I think I scale it quite relatively fast because I've done this. So many people ask me, like in the Bitcoin space, for example, they talk to me, they see me in conferences or whatever. They go, "Where'd you come from? How did you do this so fast? Like, how do you sit down with Michael Saylor or anyone else, Jeff Booth or whatever, or Larry Lepard, and just interview them as if you were their best friend, and you got to them so quickly, and you came out of nowhere." And I tell them, it's not, I came out of nowhere for you, but not for me. I've been here for 20 years preparing for this moment, working on my skills, on my abilities, on my confidence, on everything, working on myself. So I'd be able to do that now. So when I come into the next gig, and this is the next gig for me, like doing what I'm doing now, journalism and Bitcoin and everything, this is a new area, a new topic of discussion for me, but it's not new in the way I work or in the way I handle things.
Yeah, so your life leading up to your awakening here, it did prepare you, right? That marketing
Oh,
background
yeah.
was key in your awakening, right? You could see if there was marketing going on with the COVID scam, correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, COVID opened my eyes to the mass propaganda and the mass scale scam that was going on. And I was shocked to discover what I discovered. And I looked at things from a point of view of a marketeer. That was my way in to discovering the scam. I'm like, there's an orchestrated marketing campaign going on here. I wonder why on a global scale. Why? What are they hiding? What's going on here? And yeah, little did I know that I'm going to be awakened out of this and discover how forever and ever the health system has been rigged. Not forever and ever, but for many, many years, at least the last 100 years. Yeah, and I'm so happy because, we talked about making changes in one's lives due to what you're discovering, the new information that comes to light. I have ditched all allopathic medicine in my life and in my son's life for the past 5 years, and I love it. Like the fact that I don't even take paracetamol, like nothing, zero. I have a headache or stomach ache, something, whatever. I have other ways, alternative ways to handle that with etheric oils, with herbal medicine, with other ways of doing things, nature-based medicine, which is amazing. And it also takes like my body time to recover and heal from almost 40 years of allopathic medicine. Like, for example, my menstrual cycle is not regular since I got off the, how do you call it, the birth control pills. And because my body was used to like something artificial, external, to tell it how to operate. And once I got off it, was like, okay, hold on. So what do I do now? My body's like, wait, what do I need to like produce hormones on my own? I don't know. I don't remember how to do that. Haven't done that in 30 something years. So through mushrooms, microdosing on mushrooms, I'm able to kind of teach my body again how to bring that back. And it's not easy. I have to make changes. I'd love it to be, how do you call, like recurring without any intervention, but I have to make changes, and that takes a toll. That takes some effort from me, but I will make that change because it's more important to me to live healthy than to trick my body with chemicals and drugs that are no good and can be dangerous.
There is a big correlation, isn't there, between living healthy in the Bitcoin world? A lot of people are into avoiding big pharma. Don't you think that it's part of the package? Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why I love the Bitcoin space so much, is because I find a very high percentage of people that are like-minded to myself. And like in any group in life, in nature, every group is very homogeneous, very heterogeneous, like very different. There are many variations, many differences in every group. But relatively speaking, if you take, I think, the Bitcoin community, there is a higher percentage of people who care about spiritual awakening, about living healthy, about getting away from scams in general, not being scammed, in finding sovereignty. So I find that I can relate to a lot more people in that community than in any other group, which is really cool.
So one other point I wanted to talk about in your worlds coming together is you're doing a podcast with Walker while there was a rocket attack happening.
That's right. I will not deny that. So that happened, a few months ago when he was interviewing me for his podcast. It was like a deep conversation about the New World Order. And we were talking, I think, about the Middle East at that moment. And then the siren went off and the rockets started coming down from Iran at that moment. Yeah, and I told him that may happen, and that happened. And he was like, "Do you want to stop recording? Do you want to, do you want to go to shelter?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not going anywhere. This is, I'm not going anywhere, generally speaking, whenever there are sirens, not just in that podcast." And that is something that some would say, "Oh, you're stupid, like you're risking your life." And I would say two things about that. First of all, it's my choice. Secondly, I don't live in fear. I don't buy into the fear porn, the fear propaganda that people of Israel are undergoing and that people in war zones all around the world are under. It's horrible to live in fear. And when you are in a war zone, that is the kind of normal state of being for people to be in fear. And if they would not admit that they're living in fear, but there will be this underlying subtle anxiety, what Desmond calls free floating anxiety, that some people may not know how to attribute that anxiety to things that are happening around them. And I refuse to live like that, even if I live in a very tough place. And so I don't participate in a lot of the ceremonies in this place. One of them is the sirens and the rockets and whatever. And my belief is that, I have a role to play in this world. I have a purpose. I am trying to fulfill on my purpose and my role as best I can. And I'm giving it my all, and I'm having fun while doing it as much as I can. And if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And it's no big deal, because death is no big deal. I mean, I'm not disrespecting anyone's pain around death, and there is pain. And I feel pain when people that I love around me are dying. And even when people that I don't know are dying, I experience pain. But I don't think that death is the end of life. Death is just another stop on the way, because life is eternal. And so if it's my time to go in this part of my journey, then it's my time to go, and I'll continue the journey. So I don't want to live life in fear. And whenever someone turns on the siren, it's like taming a dog. You turn on the siren and you have to go run and hide and be in fear until 10 minutes. Now you don't have to fear anymore for your life. Now you're fine. And it's like a taming process. It's like a switch that someone is switching on and off on your emotions. Now you need to be fearful. Now you feel safe. Now you can be happy. Now you need to be sad. Now you need to do this, to do that, to be like this, to be like that. And I will not let anyone control my feelings or my choices. I want to be the one dictating how I feel. I mean, obviously there are some feelings that come in. You cannot control them, right? It's energy. It comes in and I let it be, and then it goes away. But I can try to establish as much agency over myself as I can. I can try, and that's part of my sovereignty and my agency over my life and my body. And so I don't play the game. So yeah, so we continued recording with Walker, and he was like, his face are pale white. And I'm like, dude, that's fine. Let's just keep going. If it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And he's like, whoa, this lady is weird. And we kept on going. And I think he made a clip out of it and put it out there, and it became viral. And everyone said, oh, you're so, you're so courageous and da da da. And I'm like, thank you. I was, loving the support, but what people didn't understand, that for me it was nothing special. It wasn't a big deal. And in fact, I think that when you unfortunately visit in war zones around the world, like if I speak to Ukrainian people, which I just did when I was in El Salvador, I met some Ukrainian people and I spoke to them about living in war. And for them, it's longer than for me, this cycle, like a few years now for the Ukrainian war, 3 years. They describe it just the same as me. You know, they say, yeah, there's a siren, there are air strikes. Some people go and hide in shelter, and some people just stay where they are. And sometimes it happens during the night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m., and they don't want to, wake up and go to another room or go to a shelter. They're like, okay, I'm just going to keep on sleeping. And that's what I do. So it's not unique to me. There are other people like me that refuse to let that thing control them. It's not easy to do, or it's not easy to hear about that, but it exists, and it's a fucked up reality. But that's what we have, and I think it makes me much stronger. It makes those people much stronger, and able to handle a lot more. And I'm not saying, by the way, if I felt like this attack was so severe, or if it would increase in interval, the cadence of it would accelerate, I would probably go to shelter at one point. I would still try and guard myself in whatever sane possible way, but not when it's like here and there. And I discern. I use my judgment to decide when it's right and when it's not.
So I'm looking down this list of stuff you've done just in the last 2 years, and then there's just this, oh yeah, here's this other thing. You used to be in the Israeli military, and then you commented on the October 7th attacks. You got on the Dark Horse podcast talking about that.
Right.
Do you want to mention that at all, what that was like? And
yeah, sure.
You interviewed some survivors as well, right? I love those interviews of a couple of survivors. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did. So when October 7th happened, I felt the need to come out and speak about what I'm seeing in front of my eyes, where I live, and based on my military experience, because I've been in the army for 2 years almost. When I was 18, it was 20 something years ago. And I came out, I spoke about it, and I put it out there. And little did I know that would become completely viral. And not because of my pretty face, which I don't know if some people think it's pretty, but but because of what I was saying, that was so different to what everyone else was saying. The mainstream narrative was, oh, it's the biggest failure, and it's such a failure, and it's such a shame that it's happening. And I was like, fuck this. No, this is on purpose. Something is happening here that is not right. And if this is happening, then it's allowed to be happening, because this is no coincidence. This is not a mistake. This is not some kind of failure that's just happening. Too many things are not adding up. Too many things are being fucked up at the same time. This is an organized thing on behalf of, being allowed by Israel. And people hated me saying that. Guess who hated it? Israelis and Jewish people, because I was rug pulling them, and I was basically saying to them, your government doesn't care about you, and they would let you die, and you have to take care of yourself. You're on your own. And they were not ready to hear that. And I was like, fine, that's yours. You don't have to accept it. But consider that you are in your shelters, doing the right thing, protecting yourself from danger. And you have terrorists coming into your homes, slaughtering you and your family. And no one's coming to save you. So now you decide what you want to do. Take better care of yourself, or wait for someone to come and save you. They're not coming to save you. Like, you have seen the most extreme case of a government neglect. It's not just the government, right? The army, the police, all the forces that are supposed to be there for you in that time of crisis were not there. And you still choose to trust them? Go ahead, trust them. It's your choice. I'm trying to raise the alarm and put the warning sign out there that you can only trust yourself at that time, I think, and your families and people close to you. And so prepare, just be better prepared for what's coming, because this is not going to be easy. So yeah, I did that. It went viral. It was tough for me, very tough period. I did an interview with Brett Weinstein a few days later to talk about everything I've seen and to talk about my military experience, to show how October 7th was not what you think it is or what they're telling you it is, but some other alternative explanations. That interview became very viral. And then I went through an attack by Jewish and Israeli people, that some of them are supposed to be like freedom fighters that were fighting alongside me during COVID on the truth and the freedom. And now they were against me because I was voicing views that were different to theirs. Yeah, but they made sure to show me what they think about me ad hominem for 2 weeks, more or less, even more, few weeks, online, on Twitter, in English, to try and show the world how dangerous I am. And I'm this, there were many titles and labels that I got during this time, including self-hating Jew, spreading anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, like many things that I was told, which is so ridiculous. Yeah, but that's yeah. So October 7th, and then I interviewed a few survivors, like you said. One was a young woman of 25 years old, more or less, who was trapped in, or actually hiding in a bush for 6 hours during October 7th, while Hamas terrorists were running around her bush, killing people. And the nearby kibbutz next to her was a slaughterhouse. She was hearing everything, and she was miraculously surviving this in the bush. And she managed to escape. So she told her story. That was incredible. Her name is Maya Alper, and I recommend listening to that episode. And then I interviewed a guy that his brother was murdered on the day, and he was reading his how do you call it? I forget the name in English. What you read in the funeral.
Elegy, is it? Elegy?
Yes, yes, elegy. And his elegy was really just defying the Israeli government and the global powers. And it was so good to have him on and let him take all his anger and rage out on those entities, because you wouldn't hear much of that. So I mean, I could have interviewed many people, but I chose to interview those that had criticism over the establishment and over what has happened on October 7th, rather than the ones that have been hit so hard and still chose to somehow, I don't know, defend the government or defend the state. Like, they should be in jail, all of them. The prime minister, the ministers, the chief commander, the police, everyone that was involved in this should be behind bars, in my opinion, because they have committed crimes, just like in COVID. Yeah, and my views are not the popular views, and they're not easy to say. but someone needs to say them, because if we don't say them, then people would think that everyone is the same and that we all comply and agree with everything that's happening. And I don't.
I think it's so important that you have the courage to say this stuff. Incredibly important. One follow-up question is, on October 7th, did anybody have private firearms so they could shoot back at the terrorists, or was everybody unarmed as they were getting slaughtered?
There are people that have firearms in Israel, and there were very brave people that had firearms in the areas that were hit. It's called the Gaza envelope area, where a lot of the kibbutzim and villages were hit, and they were heroes to use their firearms during that day. But many villages, or many people that live in those areas, have had their arms taken away from them by the state in the weeks and months and years leading to October 7th. From, the reasons are unclear of why they had taken it away from them, but there was this trend of disarming a lot of the armed people in Israel. And I'm not talking about soldiers or police officers. I'm talking about like normal citizens that want to bear arms. It's very difficult to get a license for weapons in Israel if you're not a soldier or in duty. And you would expect them to make it easier after October 7th, or in general, but they don't, which bears the question. The question why? Why do they not make it easier? And their official answer is because of the crime in the Arab society in Israel. Right? The Arab people in Israel. And I'm not saying there is no crime. There is a very high level of crime in the Arab society in Israel. But that's not good enough. That's not the right way to go, I think. And I just wanted to mention that I'm not an expert on wars, military, weaponry. I'm not an expert on those things. I know the answer to your question now because I was researching this before, after October 7th. But I don't know what the situation is today, for example, because I'm not keeping track. I'm not interested in knowing those things regularly. It's too hard to live here and keep the hand on the pulse on. It's too hard for me to live here and keep the hand on the pulse on all these details, because it's so heartbreaking. It's hard to know everything. So I'm not well informed today, for example.
You have an excellent quote that I don't have in front of me about this whole Build Back Better thing, that first there has to be destruction, then the elites get this opportunity to build back allegedly better. Do you think there's a lot of that going on?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Letting stuff happen so that they can build back. It sure looks like
my opinion, my view is 1,000% that all the destruction you see around the world these days, and that is related to wars, conflicts, sometimes natural disasters that are not being met with a proper response, like you've had fires in the US in various places, or earthquakes, whatever. I think that a lot of the destruction we are seeing is there in order to build back better, to continually build new new projects where destruction is now a reality. And those projects are based on the continuation of feeding the fiat beast, the fiat monetary beast, the beast that keeps printing money and keeps driving the economy forward, right? And our economy is a debt-based economy. It's an economy that needs more debt in order to exist. You can go watch my episode with Ed Dowd about that. He's an ex-BlackRock analyst, right? He knows debt better than probably many people, most people. around the world. And he would tell you that this is a debt-based economy and you have to continue printing money in order to sustain that debt. And in order to print money, you need a good excuse. An excuse like a pandemic, like global warming, like wars, right? And so ask yourself, what is the size of the rehabilitation project that is going to come about after a certain destruction? And there you have it. There's your answer for the Build Back Better theory. Like Gaza. What is the size of the Gaza rehabilitation project? $80 billion. It's an $80 billion project. And many thousands of people did, right? So, and obviously you have all these crazy ideas being thrown out there, like with no regards to people's lives, talking about the whole Gaza situation like a monopoly game. I will buy this, I will put that, there will be real estate here, this is a great area to invest, and we'll move the people from here to there, and we'll put them here, and whoever wants to take them. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy shit. And my theory is that this is all about building back better. And that's probably the reason why October 7th happened. So that there's a good justification to go in there and create that 80 billion project, right? And it includes natural resources and energy, gas reserves, oil reserves. It includes real estate. It includes, by the way, green energy projects like Elon Musk's projects, like electric vehicles, solar, wind, etc., etc. So smart cities, surveillance, cameras everywhere, da 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 da. It's all in their plans. They're talking about these things openly. So, you want to call it a conspiracy theory, go ahead. Be my guest. I don't give a fuck. But, you can be smart and understand that the direction that the world's going, and then prepare yourself and your life and choose where you want to live, what you want to do, how you want to hedge what's yours, how you want to protect yourself and your family, and what's your choice. How do you want to live your life? So, yeah, build back better. I'm seeing it everywhere. It's like a pattern. There's this video of world leaders saying build back better all at the same time when COVID started. It's like they get this cue from above. You guys, you need to come out to your public and give them the build back better spiel. Remember? The one we've been preparing for? That one? Now is the time. There's a virus. Now is the time. There's a natural disaster. Now is the time. Like, they pull it out there whenever they need to. And by the way, Build Back Better, it's not just a slogan. It's a project by the UN. Search it on Wikipedia and see what it's not a project. Sorry, it's a program. It's a program for handling natural disasters and rehabilitation and da-da-da. Like, this is it's all like, it's like how we need, it's like the pandemic preparedness program that they're working on. The globalists, it's the same. This is anyway, you get it.
Do you see the people behind this as evil geniuses, or this whole Build Back Better thing? I think that was a huge miscalculation that they all did it at the same time. We're supposed to think it wasn't a globalist thing when, as you said, just at the same 2-day span or something, they were all saying it. Did they think they were going to be able to sell that as just each individual leader came up with it on their own? No globalism involved?
Yeah, and you bet that they succeeded in that, because people like you and I, it looked weird to us, but most normies out there, for them, this is like, oh, okay, my leader is here to help me. He's looking at this disaster, this situation, and he wants to make the most of it. I'm in good hands. I'm relaxed now. This propaganda works. It worked not as they planned, because it did manage to wake a lot of people up, but it works. It still works. It's still working. And do I think that there is some evil cabal behind this, planning all this shit? I think to some extent there is, yes. But it's not the one that you think. It's not the group of people that you see out there. It's not the governments. It's not even the globalists that we love saying. It's more shadows behind the scenes that we don't know who they are. We don't see them. They will never be probably exposed. And they're the ones that are in more secretive groups, like the Club of Rome and the Bilderberg Group and other societies, secret societies that are out there. And they have the mission. It's not me making it up. This is declared. They have the mission of designing life on Earth for humanity. That's why they gather and think about global plans and programs and treaties and policies and innovations and futuristic stuff. That's why they recruit people like Yuval Noah Harari, who used to be a historian but became a futurist, like many other ones, because they need to plan ahead. They really believe that it's their role to navigate where life is going, where humanity is going. What is it going to look like? They put together all these programs and plans, and they try to steer big ships in their direction. So Agenda 2030, which I speak about quite often, is just one of those plans. And it's a very it's a very public plan. It's out there for all governments to adopt. In fact, most governments signed on it together in the UN Assembly of, I don't remember which year, 2000 something. Yeah, 2005, I think. 180 something countries signed on that treaty to implement Agenda 2030 by the year 2030. There is also an Agenda 2050, if you want to go ahead and check that one out. There are many plans and treaties and agendas. The only reason why people find it easier to dismiss it with conspiracy theory is because they don't want to take the time of day to read that horribly long plan or website, or it's not fun. I tell you, we talked about it at the beginning. It's not fun, but it exists. All those things are out there. Yeah. So Agenda 2030 is one. I mean, your podcast is about climate and energy, and Agenda 2030 covers a lot of that, actually. If you want, we can talk about that. I mean, I can show the part where Agenda 2030 and the climate part is meeting the monetary agenda. This is a part of my presentation, The New Monetary Order in a Changing World, where I show how the new monetary system is shaping up. And just in a nutshell, I don't know if that will make a lot of sense when it's out of context of the whole presentation, but in a nutshell, we're going towards a monetary system that is permissioned. So you have to get a permission in order to participate in it, as you do today by the banks. And it's going to be on a blockchain, normally a private blockchain. Each country will implement it a little bit differently. It's not going to be the Bitcoin blockchain. It's going to be probably Ethereum blockchain or another blockchain, where I mean, that's the vision, right? It doesn't mean that they will succeed in it, but basically the bankers, the central bankers around the world and the governments want to have a system where they can control as much as what's happening with people's finances. And CBDC is one instantiation of it. It is not necessarily going to go in that direction. It may be the technology used for wholesale CBDC, so between banks or between governments, not necessarily retail CBDC, which is you and the bank or you and the state. Between you and the state, there may be other solutions, but in a nutshell, it's going to be digital. It's going to be on the blockchain. It's going to probably involve stable coins to some degree. And it's going to involve everything is going to be digitized, which means that everything needs to be also quantifiable, and analog is not something that works well with a digital monetary system. So that's where carbon ties in quite well with this vision for a new monetary order. And carbon, I mean, it started, you better than anyone, what kind of role carbon is playing in the whole climate agenda. Basically trying to convince society that carbon or CO2 is the cause of all of our problems, and it's warming the planet, and it's something that we need to mitigate and get rid of. Net zero, right? Zero carbon by the year 2050. So that insanity is basically, I see CBDC and climate agenda as the Overton windows. So you open the window so widely with such insane claims. Like CBDC is insane because it's basically, China of the West. Like, we're going to surveil everything you do and control and da-da-da. And climate is like, we're going to quantify everything you do based on this pretense or basic assumption that carbon is something bad that we need to mitigate, right? And so once they've opened those Overton windows, now they can soften it and make it a bit less harsh, a bit less communistic China, a bit less, we're going to quantify everything, but they've opened the window already, so you can play inside with that narrative of carbon. And now carbon is like normalized in the public discourse and in people's perception and consciousness as something that it's good to eliminate carbon or minimize it. And so there have been carbon markets, financial markets for decades now. Now it's becoming even more important, and more things are happening around carbon. Like it's accelerating. So let's take a look at that. So in the Agenda 2030, basically there are 17 sustainable development goals, and goal number 13, as you can see, is climate action, and climate plays a very big role in this agenda. It affects almost all other goals. As you can see, it has an impact on them in some shape or form, and it also impacts the new monetary order. Now, it's used as the excuse to enact more control over the population and to drive the economy forward.
Climate change is still on top of the global agenda. From decarbonizing to nature-based solutions, from building a circular economy to developing nature credits, the Paris Agreement continues to be the best hope for all humanity.
Right, you heard her say nature credits, right? We're going to get to that. So while she thinks Paris agreements are critical, Trump seems to think otherwise, pulling the US out of the Paris agreements, which is, I think, a very good step in the right direction. And maybe then it's not a surprise to see world leaders calling for a financial reset. French President Macron said in 2023 that the world needs a public financial shock to fight global warming. Right? So they're tying in the global warming or the climate change agenda with financial reset, which is basically the process that we are undergoing today. And let's take a look at some examples. So a product that was fortunately taken off the market about 4 years ago was MasterCard's Do Black card that monitors and limits consumption related to carbon emissions. Check this out.
Do Black, the world's first credit card with a carbon limit. Simply put, it's the first credit card ever to stop you from overspending. Not based on your available funds, but rather on the levels of CO2 emissions caused by your consumption. Do Black helps you track your climate impact and ensures that you reduce it by 50% in line with the UN 2030 recommendation.
Right. The core purpose of Do Black is not only the ability to measure the impact of your consumption, but also bringing it to a direct halt, making it a radical tool against climate change.
That was real?
Yes.
That's so
But it was
freaking
taken off the
stupid.
market. That was real, and this lady is real. She's the CEO of the company. Did you see that her surname is Green? Natalie Green?
I did.
Another area of development is how to bring this agenda to our personal wallets, taxing and limiting us. And this is programmed and regulated money that can be very useful to implement this vision. So if we take CBDC, for example, it can work beautifully with that kind of vision. So let's hear that vision.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
Stay tuned. Are you ready? I want to share my my thread about this so that people can go check it out. This is a whole thread about personal carbon footprint. Okay, but essentially, if you take, I took just this thread and I started pulling on it, and I found that there is so much stuff around personal carbon footprint. Like it's a whole theme that they're trying to propagate and develop. So in a recent World Economic Forum article, you'll find that's called My Carbon. They're proposing to track individual carbon consumption and set carbon allowances. And they say that there have been numerous examples of personal carbon allowances programs in the past. However, they didn't succeed because the society didn't accept them. There was resistance to them. So now, and this is another research in 2021 in Nature magazine, the journal, Personal Carbon Allowances Revisited, and it's a research that they used at the World Economic Forum to justify this personal carbon allowance vision. And they're coming up, we talked about the social resistance, right? So I'm quoting here, people may be more willing to accept the monitoring and restrictions associated with personal carbon allowance to achieve safer climate. And they're talking about how, if natural disasters come into play, people will be more susceptible to those kind of changes or control. And the best example is this guy.
I outlined many of the scenarios that I outlined before the pandemic. I didn't outline them as a prophecy, but just as a possibility. Maybe it will happen. It's not an extremely deadly virus. it's not the Black Death, and look what it's doing to the world. So now just try to think what will be the implications of a much bigger problem like climate change. Also, conceptually, it shows that, and here I completely agree with you, Rutger, that it shows you that you can change things on a massive scale. That, and again, you can stop all flights. You can lock down entire countries. You can actually do that. And life goes on in some way. And this, I would say, may make us more open to radical ideas about how to deal also with climate change.
Right? So you could look at that and say, well, maybe COVID was just a pilot program for climate restrictions, because now we found the way, we cracked it, of how to enable societal acceptance of such measures, right? I mean, they're saying it. I didn't say it. And then you start looking at examples of how they are trying to measure all those personal carbon footprints, right? So this is on banking apps, Commonwealth Bank in Australia. There's Brazil Bank C6 also measuring carbon footprint. I mean, today it's already, this was like a year ago, it was still rare, but today you can see carbon footprint measured almost in everything you do, right? You buy a dress on a whatever Zara, you'll see how much CO2 you've saved by doing that, or you buy a flight ticket, how much emissions you have not saved, wasted in buying that flight ticket. And then they'll start offering you ways to offset that, right? You can buy carbon credits in order to offset the amount of carbon that you have now spent. Let's see what this one has to
The
say.
growing physical floods, droughts, and wildfires last year were just a preview of what is to come. A hotter climate and nature loss are changing our economy and our financial system. At the ECB, we must understand this change to ensure financial stability and to fulfill our price stability mandate. With our new climate and nature plan, we focus on the following three things. First, the green transition. Second, the growing physical impact of climate change. And third, the risks from nature loss and degradation. We will study the impact on the economy and the financial system. This will help us improve our own models. We will also work to reduce our carbon footprint in everything we do, from banknotes to how we supervise banks.
Oh, great. Now I feel better. So now you see more examples, carbon credits introduced by the Bank of International Settlements in a pilot project called Genesis for CBDC. So this lady from the BIS.
2050. So this is how the flow of the bond goes. There's of course a premium being paid, and in exchange you get these mitigation and found interests, which pay back to our carbon credits. So
that theme repeats again and again. The carbon credits. In New York, they are, reducing CO2 emissions by tracking people's consumption habits. This is the tracker on the New York City website of how much carbon is being emitted on each one of those food, housing, services, average household consumption-based greenhouse gas inventory. Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? Transportation, et cetera. Basically, the most radical thing that this guy said there, the New York mayor, is that we have to start limiting your meat consumption. And then there's a whole document about that. Here are more examples. MasterCard has developed a carbon tracker for partners. So it's an SDK that any partner of MasterCard can take and implement that into their payment systems, so that if you are working with MasterCard, you can have some kind of a carbon tracker on your financial service or payment, so that you can show people how much carbon they are spending or emitting. A great extension of the C40 consortium of Build Back Better. Anyway, C40 is a whole other topic. Let's see. Commonwealth Bank. There are more examples. Canada carbon tracker on Visa credit cards. MasterCard, again, that's the Do Black that we've seen. Okay, the world's richest 1% of people are responsible for around the same percentage of global carbon emissions as the 5 billion people who represent the 66% poorest, according to a report published by Oxfam. So now we go for the rich and tie that to carbon. BP was using the personal carbon footprint term already in 2019, so it's not a new thing, as you can see. And then this lady wrote about it. It turns out that the concept of carbon footprint was the brainchild of an advertising firm working for BP. So that was a long time ago. And more you have here Wired, an article on Wired. The practical ways to reduce your carbon footprint, including fly less, plant-based food, make your home more energy efficient, drive less, buy less, and the best one, have fewer children, right? Anyway, more and more examples of personal carbon footprint. Here's one great example of offsetting. Now that we know how much carbon footprint we emit, we can find a way to offset that and buy credits from one. There are many companies doing that today. TerraPass is one of them, where you can basically purchase carbon credits to compensate on the sin of emitting carbon. It's your way of redeeming yourself, basically. Okay, let me go back to the presentation. I think that point is clear now, right? About personal carbon.
That thread is fantastic. Wonderful.
Thank you. Play from current slide. Okay.
We're developing.
Yeah, the carbon credit stuff. I don't know. You want me to play that? This is like the social credit score. I won't play that. It's a great video, but I can send it.
Yeah.
We can put a link to it. But basically, my thesis is that the carbon credit score is the modern social credit score of China, right? Because if you try and feed people with a narrative of social credit score in the West, they will wake up. So you have to find a much better rebrand to it. So the personal carbon score is a better idea than a social credit score, which, you know, in the West, we don't score people based on their whatever habits or consumption or whatever. So we just check your carbon. That's all we do, right? Okay, so carbon markets are on the rise. According to the World Bank, global carbon pricing revenues reached a record of $104 billion in 2023, with 75 carbon pricing instruments operating worldwide. An example of a carbon-related deal is the UK's Carbon Place and PNZ Carbon, distributing carbon credits. Carbon Place was founded by 9 global banks and developed a transaction network. So that's just one example, but there are so many, you see this, there's so many articles out there about companies implementing carbon credits in so many ways. Another 2 recent examples are Microsoft restoring parts of Brazil's Amazon and Atlantic forests in exchange for carbon credits worth potentially $200 million. And the second one is a $1.5 billion effort to protect the Amazon rainforest was announced in Davos in the World Economic Forum, aiming to sell carbon credits linked to conservation efforts. I love this lady. You see, the fiat system, the fiat monetary system that is what we have today, your US dollar, your euro, whatever fiat currency that you're using, it's inevitably dictating a race, one that we're all taking part in. Fiat incentivizes everyone involved in the creation of money to print as much as they can, and it incentivizes everyone playing the game to extract natural resources. This is what it looks like when greedy, power-hungry bureaucrats play the game wildly on the account of the peasants and Mother Nature.
Today, carbon pricing, ETSs, carbon taxes already cover about 25% of global emissions, right? We should actually look at scaling this, right, to cover all 100% of carbon emissions. And beyond carbon, let's think about other aspects of nature that are easier to quantify. We probably will not be able to quantify everything on day one, but what about water, right? That's also quite possible for us to start integrating systematically into current trading carbon pricing mechanisms.
Right. And just a reminder, a friendly reminder for those who don't remember, who owns the science and controls the information you see about climate?
You know, we partnered with Google, for example. If you Google climate change, you will, at the top of your search, you will get all kinds of UN resources. We started this partnership when we were shocked to see that when we Googled climate change, we were getting incredibly distorted information right at the top. So we're becoming much more proactive. You know, we own the science, and we think that the world, you know, should know it, and the platforms themselves also do.
Incredibly distorted information. We had to fix it.
It's one of my favorite clips of all time.
I know, mine too. Yeah, so that was the part I thought it would be relevant to share about how climate and financial markets are being merged, intertwined. And I think that we will see this trend growing with time. You'll see more and more intervention of climate agenda into financial markets, on the most part to justify the changes that they are putting in the monetary system. I mean, they're making those changes whether we like it or not. It's happening. I mean, the change into a new digital monetary system is happening. It's just that I think that climate is going to be their most convenient excuse to blame it on, to say, you know, we have to do this because of climate. We have to, you know, carbon and climate, and we have to offset.
We do want to touch on geoengineering, right, before we finish up?
Yeah, maybe we'll just mention that. I think we have to show a little clip. Let's show that one. That will bring people up to speed on this wonderful woman. Check out what she's doing. So this brave woman, I'm just going to quickly share that. She walked into the office of the pilot that had been spraying for 3 hours, twice a day over her home with cloud seeding flares. She did 20 tests of rainwater directly after which showed levels of aluminum, barium, strontium, zinc, magnesium to titanium. She directly confronted him and had a very long conversation. He knew exactly what he was doing along with the rest of the crew that flies. He didn't deny anything, by the way. He sounds embarrassed, but not remorseful. The question has been asked many times, who is doing this and why, and da-da-da-da. And just let's take a look at this clip.
Hi. Nice. Thank you. Good to see you. I'm sure it's something. You're Tim, right?
No.
Or no?
No. I don't know a Tim.
Jody?
No. I know a Jody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jody Fisher?
No, yeah, I know Jody Fisher.
You do? Okay, good.
Yeah.
And who are you?
I'm the one that questions.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Do you want outside or not? Or just whatever. Are you free now?
No, I think to research.
Okay, so I have paperwork for you that I want to give to you. I have okay, but that we've been trying to reach Jody and you for a long time.
Okay.
And we are tired of you dumping the middles all over our county.
Okay. Well, I'm not the one to talk to you about that.
No, but you are, but you're the one that's doing it. So I've been taking reading samples. I have over 20 samples. And every time we fly, we get high amounts of aluminum, very strontium, titanium, magnesium. So I want to know, are you aware of what you're doing? I know everything is planned to increase water supply to Fertile and Modesto, but it's really happening.
Yeah, you've been talked to.
Right.
Yeah,
So call them, and they're not calling me back. So we're now getting really involved, and now we're going to bring something legal against your company.
So this is about 15 minutes of her speaking about this. Maybe we can add the link in the show notes to that recording, but also to her. She wrote this Substack article, right, where she gives you all the receipts. She shows you the lab tests that she was doing on the rain samples right after the spraying is happening. And you can see the amounts of heavy metals in the rain and the flight tracks and all the receipts, basically. She's one brave woman. And her friend came with her. So there's also a video showing her speaking to the pilot. So it's not, everyone knows it's not rigged. It's all real. And it's quite amazing. This is Jody Fisher that she was mentioning. He's a pilot there. This lady is basically showing that geoengineering is happening. Now, I think it's important to make the distinction between different types of geoengineering projects. There are ones that are for cloud seeding to create more rain and snow. And there are others who are allegedly supposed to reduce the temperature in order to cool down Earth because of global warming. And there are different types of technologies used to do geoengineering. Nothing is being denied by governments or people that are approached about that. In fact, you can find a lot of evidence that this is happening. Like, for example, this document of the UN that I've analyzed, this document called One Atmosphere. And it's basically an expert review on solar radiation modification. So SRM, solar radiation modification, is an umbrella name for all these types of technologies for spraying out different types of chemicals or particles into the stratosphere in order to reduce Earth temperature, basically to reflect back the sun's rays to the sun and have less sun reaching the planet. And you can see in this document, 44 pages, for example, here in the appendix, you have SRM field experiments and the different types of experiment. This SAI means stratospheric aerosol injection. So this is a spraying from airplanes. And there is an experiment halted in 2012, for example, in the UK, just for example, right? It's admitted that this is happening, but it was stopped in 2012. Since then, it never happened, right? People continue seeing it, but yeah, it's stopped. This is one example. There are other examples here where, you know, they mention Harvard University doing some kind of experiment with SAI. But according to that document, according to them, there is no large-scale deployments. There are only experiments happening. Marine cloud brightening. This is, you can see that on MSNBC, I think. And a university is so proud, I don't remember which university is so proud to expose to MSNBC their experiment with marine cloud brightening, which is basically big turbines sitting on a ship in the middle of the ocean, releasing those chemicals to the air in order to create that layer that will block the sun rays from coming down to Earth. Whatever, all these crazy ideas, everything is being laid out here in this document for you to see. Now, you want to still continue calling this conspiracy theory, be my guest. Again, once again, I don't give a fuck. But, you know, the UN is admitting that those experiments are happening. Some of them, as you can see, for decades, from 1967, etc. And many of them are still happening today. You can see the dates here, but, you know, we just don't want to admit that that's happening. Now, the question I have is, if all of these are experiments and not large-scale deployments, yet people report them on a daily basis because they just look up and they see them happening, then what is going to happen when it becomes mass adoption, like mass scale deployment of these things? And have we been informed? Have we given our consent to this, since those chemicals are being integrated into our food, water, soil, and health? And I have not given my consent to any of that shit. So I want to know. So that's why I care about geoengineering.
So I think the terminology is very important here, because I'm hearing this guy say it's not a chemtrail unless it's from a commercial aircraft, and it has to be widespread. So if there's a non-commercial aircraft spraying chemicals, if it's not widespread, it's just a trail of chemicals. It's not a chemtrail. So there's that.
Oh, right, sure, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big distinction, but maybe we should be calling it weather modification, because there's a whole long list of different weather modification, and clearly it's being done for sure, and there's no denying it.
I am, even when we asked Kunin about that, he said, you know, there are projects, things are happening. He didn't deny, he didn't go into detail. He didn't say what is happening, and I don't think he's informed, but, you know, it's actually, for me, I'm so curious to hear some of the experts that you interview on your podcast that are related to climate and energy speaking about these things, because they have so much more expertise and proficiency in those topics than independent journalists like myself or Louis Brackbull, who is researching this, or people like Daniel Prince, who's a podcaster who's bringing attention to that as well. There are so many great people out there trying to raise awareness to these things. I even heard recently, what's her name? The lady that was number 2 with RFK Jr., Shannon.
Nicole Shanahan, right?
Nicole Shanahan, yes. She was actually saying, yeah, we've been doing these things. I mean, she's in the know-how of some of these things, and yeah, we need to talk about it more, and we need to expose these things. And I'm very glad that the trajectory is to start speaking about these things. I think also in the recent USAID exposures of Elon Musk, you can see that some money has been going towards some of those companies. And we need more visibility on what's happening, because it affects all of our lives, and many people are busy fighting back those tinfoil hatters that are spreading those conspiracy theories about geoengineering, while at the same time this is happening. I mean, you can ignore it as much as you want, but it's happening, and I think we deserve some answers and some visibility about it, because it's global. It's happening everywhere. There are some places that it's happening less than in others. There are places that are heavily struck by this, but we need to know. So I try to do my little part in raising awareness about it.
I was encouraged that Brett Weinstein mentioned it on the Joe Rogan podcast, that he suspects that experimentation is going on, because that totally makes sense. But then there's this whole idea that if you think experimentation is going on, then you must also believe that the government can just spin up a hurricane and make it hit Asheville or something. And that's a long leap from experimentation to they can do anything they want, or they can control the weather in any way they want. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think they can influence many things. I have no clue whether they can whether they can manipulate the weather in such a degree that it will cause those climate phenomena that we've been seeing. I don't know, but I'd love to learn.
Okay, I do need to wrap up here. I thank you so much for doing this. This is fantastic content. I think I mentioned I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing, so take care of
You
yourself.
are my number one fan, Tom.
Okay, all right. I would be proud if I was. But yeah, if
You are.
keep doing it. And I hope to have you on again if you have some time. And we'll do
Thank
this
you
again.
very much for having me. I appreciate you and everything you do, and I love your podcast.